I knew that business professionals were my ideal client. So I said, where can I go in the online space where most business professionals are spending their time networking and hanging out? And that was LinkedIn.
In terms of you mentoring, giving value, sharing your knowledge, what's your style like?
Don't just focus on where you are right now. Focus on where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now. And have that as your North Star. Have that as your compass.
What are your non-negotiable values that you uphold every single day?
And what I mean by that is look to people as inspirations, not competition.
How do you then measure your own success?
Everything that we strive to do for ourselves and what we teach other people is things that someone can do to position themselves as a person of value. That is the end all be all.
Welcome to Meaningful Marketing, Mentoring, Mattering with me, Joseph Alcantara. Together, we'll uncover the power of purpose, experience mentorship magic, unpack ways to make a difference, and find transformative journeys as a community. Welcome to another episode of Meaningful Marketing, Mentoring, Mattering with me, Joseph Alcantara. And today we are very lucky to have as our guest, Mr. Scott Aaron. So who is Scott? So he's an internationally acclaimed and award-winning online marketer, best-selling author, top podcaster, and an international speaker. Scott is the go-to specialist when it comes to converting traffic, establishing connections, creating income using LinkedIn, and building personal brands. Fully immersing himself in learning LinkedIn and social media strategies, Scott quickly gained traction as a leader in generating big results for the online marketers, online business owners, entrepreneurs, and internet marketers. Scott has a diverse 25-year background in wellness, sales, business, and personal coaching. He had to overcome a lot in his career and from his childhood as well, from his father having experienced a 3-year incarceration at a very young age and getting married and divorced twice, and culminating with him having to file for personal bankruptcy 7 years ago to now truly live a life on his own terms. Being resilient and understanding how to overcome obstacles has allowed Scott to flow through all of this like water to do the same. Please welcome on our podcast, Scott Aaron. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Just extremely grateful and obviously honored to be here and looking forward to dive into everything that we're going to talk about today.
I think coming from that introduction, we have a lot to unpack.
Yeah, lot to unpack.
Great stories to talk about for our audience. So let's start from the very beginning. I usually ask all my guests the same first question. And that first question is, what is your meaningful life story based on your own version from your childhood to where you are today?
You know, for me, I would say I would classify that also as almost like a superpower. And I think for me, looking back on my journey, much like you said, really having to process and deal with my father's incarceration when I was 18 going on 19, having to take over the family business as a sophomore in college. And I don't consider either of my divorces as failures. They were lessons. I feel that I was a better person each time, and it led me to my wife that I have today. And Nancy and I would not be together, and for now 7 years if it wasn't for the lessons that I learned in those other relationships. But I would say that the one word that really quantifies that is being resilient. And I think in life, life and business sort of mimic each other in the sense that you're going to learn things in your life that really challenge you, that really push you, that really will knock you down to your knees, much like in business, whether there's certain things that do work and certain things that don't work. But I think that resiliency muscle that I developed very early on as a teenager, dealing with everything with my father going away for 2.5 years, with me stepping in as a teenager, but also a full-time college student running the business to support my mom and my sister. I think that muscle that was built at such an impressionable age allowed me to realize that there wasn't going to be a straight line to get to where you want to be. There's going to be bumps and bruises that need to be had and taken, but it's not about the bumps and bruises. It's about how you recover from them, what you can learn from them, and how you can progress forward.
That is very meaningful and very beautiful to hear as well. And
Thank
I'm
you.
sure that, your situation right now, on hindsight, you're realizing that, okay, all those are lessons to be learned. All those allowed you to have that resiliency muscle to eventually lead you to where you are right now. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure that when you were 18, you're not thinking that way. It's like all of those experiences have been so painful. And it's like you're probably going to ask yourself, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to us? So how did you navigate through that process and that journey?
I've been asked that question before, and it was something that I really never thought about because my wife always talks about you can't see the label from inside the jar. So when you're in it and you're going through it, sometimes you don't realize how much you've grown, how much you've progressed. And it's not until years later when you look back and you're like, man, I had to go through a ton of stuff to get to where I am. I had to really be pushed and challenged in a specific way to get to where I wanted to be. And another interesting question that sometimes comes up, I've been asked this too, is, if you could go back and change anything that happened, would you? My answer is immediately no. And the reason why is because if I change anything in my journey, I won't be where I am right now. I wouldn't be on this podcast. My wife and I would not have the success that we do. We wouldn't be impacting the way that we are if I was to change that timeline. And I call it the Back to the Future effect. So if anyone's ever seen Back to the Future, when Marty goes back in time, he's got to make sure that he keeps all of the things that are supposed to happen. His parents having their first kiss at the Under the Sea enchantment dance. If that doesn't happen, he's not born. And, you remember he's holding that picture. And as Biff kind of intervenes, with his parents, his brother starts to disappear. His sister starts to disappear. He starts to disappear. And you remember he's on stage and he can see through his hand. So if you change anything on that timeline, things would not happen the way that they would. And for me, I can't express enough how grateful I am for the journey that I've been on, because it is relatable. And I think the other thing, Joe, that I really love is that whenever I share my story, people appreciate it because they know that there's someone else out there that they can relate to. Because again, you hear so many people talking about all their successes and the wins. And as the saying goes, people see the glory, but they don't know the story. So I love telling the story that leads to the glory, because then it proves that, okay, if Scott and his wife can do it, so can I.
I fully 100% agree with everything that you have just said. And also, probably I'm one of those people who can very much relate to the challenge and the difficulty of the past, and then being able to experience the now as well. And to your point, I think that's why a lot of people have been tuning in great podcasts and resources today, which is not just theoretical, but really real life stories from inspiring people like you. But, based on your story as well, it's quite interesting that you're playing a lot of, you're a husband, you're a business coach, you're a LinkedIn expert, you're an author as well. Just out of interest, having to juggle all of those amazing things that you do, what's your favorite? And, how do you actually make sure that you make the most of all of those great roles that you're trying to pursue right now?
I don't do anything that I don't love. I think that's one of the big things, is that you hear the saying all the time, if you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And I truly believe in that. But, everything that I've done, from the podcast to the books, to the coaching, the courses, the speaking, I would say it all revolves around, I would say, one nucleus of what really gets me going, and that is impacting people in a positive way. So as long as what I'm doing is leaving people better and shining a light on what I do as someone that is a value added resource to that person, I'm going to continue to do those things. I'm going to continue to write books. I have another one coming out in August. My wife and I are writing one together. I'm going to continue to do my podcast, now on our way to 600 episodes. Going to continue to coach people, going to continue to do keynotes, because it's gratifying to me knowing that if my message lands on the right person, whether it's pages they've read in my book, things that they've listened to in my podcast, anything they've taken away from our courses, programs, or coaching, I know that person is being left better, and I know their life will be changed if they apply what they've learned. So I would say everything kind of ties together. And that's what I also feel that a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs need to understand, that it's okay to shelve something that doesn't align with you anymore. And I think a lot of people try to force business. Anything that feels forced, you're going to organically put up a wall of resistance around it. And when you put up a wall of resistance around it, it's not going to work. And what I can tell you is that when you align yourself with things that feel good to you, they're going to feel good to other people. And that's why I can't just quantify just one thing that I'm doing that I love the most. I love it all. Because if I didn't love all those things, I would stop doing them. So I would say the company as a whole that we run, all the things that we're doing within it, including the podcast, the books, and the courses, it fills me up every single day.
That's great to hear. And it's also very inspiring because, it's a combination of understanding that everything is anchored on that impact that you would want to create via the service that you provide to others, and also making folks understand that you don't necessarily have to pick and choose, but you have to start with the reason for why you're doing certain things when it comes to your personal life and even when it comes to your business, which I think is very interesting to hear from you, especially that you're talking about, okay, you started as being a personal coach and then eventually business coach and being an author, and now delving deeper into LinkedIn, which I know was not there 20 years ago. It's like understanding social media right now is the name of the game as well. And then connectivity is something I do believe I see in you as something that you really advocate for, both in terms of you connecting with, your clients or the people who are listening to you, your audience, but also at the same time, how you have put that in practice on your advocacy for LinkedIn connections. So on that aspect, can you tell me more about what, drove your interest on LinkedIn, and what is the meaning of that for those people who are probably not into it yet?
So the interest actually came from a pivot I was making in my business. And so my traditional background was in health and wellness. I ran 3 health clubs with my family. I was a personal trainer, sports nutritionist. But as a general contractor, so to speak, as you are as a personal trainer, I was trading time for dollars. You're only as good as the amount of hours that you work. So if I worked 10 hours a day and I'm charging $70 an hour for training, I can max out at $700 a day. Mm-hmm. And again, you compound that over a week. If I do 10 sessions every day, Monday through Friday, okay, yeah, that's $700 a day. That's $3,500 a week. That's $14,000 a month, but I'm spending 50 plus hours doing that. Mm-hmm. So for me, when I became a father in 2012, it kind of gave me a new, I would say, outlook. Because I remember, my dad, still is an entrepreneur. He still is in the wellness industry, but he was a traditional business owner as well when I was a kid. But he always made time flexibility for me. He was my basketball coach when I was little. He was my baseball coach up until high school. He was at everything. He didn't miss a basketball game. And I wanted to be the same for my son. with the way that I was going about living my life and working, it wasn't going to allow me to do that. So I was getting more and more intrigued and interested in the online world. This is 2013. Social media was really exploding at this time. And I wanted to kind of break through the four surrounding walls of my gym to really expand out online. And yeah, I was on Facebook, I was on Instagram, I had a LinkedIn profile. But when I started to realize that my ideal target market were business professionals, because when I took a look at my book of business, my clients that I was training, they were all business professionals that would come to see me on their way to work for a workout, on their lunch break from work, or on their way home from work before dinner. So I knew that business professionals were my ideal client. So I said, where can I go in the online space where most business professionals are spending their time networking and hanging out? And that was LinkedIn. So I jumped on there. I changed my profile around so it reflected more of me as an online wellness professional, who I cater to, how I help them. And I started connecting with people that were not just in my local area of Philadelphia where I was living at the time, but all over the country. Because when you're in the virtual world, I could send a nutrition plan to anyone via email. I could hop on a Zoom and do something like this anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, so to speak. So I started messaging, connecting, and I started booking call after call after call. And within 8 months, I had already replaced what I was making in person, but now online.
Wow.
So I'm like, all right, I think I got something here. And I reached out to a couple of buddies of mine that were also in the online space of coaching and consulting. And I said, listen, if you're not leveraging LinkedIn, you really got to start. And here's what you need to do. And I told them a little bit of the methodology of what I was doing, A, B, and C. And one in particular wrote me back and he said, dude, I don't know what you figured out with this, but it really works. He goes, I have 14 appointments booked this week. He said, you should be teaching this. So coincidentally, at the same time, this is back now early 20, so 10 years ago, I was invited onto a podcast. And this is when podcasts were done traditionally through 1-800 conference call, right? Conferencecalling.com, right? So you would have that 18-digit PIN code to punch in the phone. And so it was all done through the phones. And I remember I was in my one bedroom, my 2-bedroom studio, and I was just pacing around the house. And, I was spouting out all these statistics and stats and facts that I knew about LinkedIn. And I hung up after I got off. It was a live call that was then recorded. I went onto Facebook and I had 8 inboxes on Facebook. And each one of them has said, how can I hire you to teach me how to use LinkedIn? And I said to myself, I'm like, these people are going to pay me to teach them how to use a social media platform. And I was like, okay, I really got to get serious about this because now there's obviously a need and a gap in the marketplace and people are looking for it to be filled with the knowledge that I now have. And that was 10 years ago. So from that point, I started doing all the coaching and consulting. It led to a membership site that I have now, a done for you program. We have a high level mastermind, the podcast, the books, everything spurred from that leap of faith that I had to say, you know what, I'm going to bet on me. And if this is something that people are going to be willing to pay for, it's going to be a premium price. And again, now, it even so happens that Caesars Entertainment brought me on as one of their independent contracted keynote speakers. So now I speak to some of their large accounts and they fly me all around the country and I do LinkedIn keynotes. And it would have never have been possible if I didn't take that first step and say, you know what, let me put myself out there. Let me gain all the knowledge I can. Let me prove the concept first. And that's the thing. I didn't take this to market until I got the results for myself first. You have to prove the concept yourself before it then can be spread to the masses.
Wow, that is such a case study, Scott. I was like, let's start from, the fact that people probably cannot think that wellness coaching and LinkedIn of all platforms can actually mesh and work well together. But the fact that you had the foresight and the strategic thought, and actually you did consumer insighting because you said, okay, where are my target market actually going, for example? What's their process like when it comes to going to the gym, or probably you coaching them like physically then, and then realizing that most of them or majority of them are in LinkedIn? That's such a strategic marketing insight or thought to begin with. And then eventually, when you said that, okay, we need to see if the model works, we need to see how the model will actually, serve its purpose, and that's the only time that you're going to offer it to the world, whether organically or pay to play, or some people directly reaching out to you to actually hire you, which I think is really a good model because it's tried and tested, it's true, and it debunks the fact that some people will be saying, oh, that's impossible. So having that 10-year journey when it comes to the professional side of things, of creating, service or products within that space, what's your take on the evolution of business right now, especially in marketing, for those industries or categories that doesn't seem to be, easy to figure out? Like, for example, wellness or personal coaching, because you would think that, oh, I'm supposed to be in a gym, I should
Right.
be one-on-one with this person. What's your take like when it comes to people trying to figure out their next step, thinking that, oh, I'm stuck in the place where I am right now in terms of innovation?
Well, as the marketing world and industry, I guess industries as a whole changes, there's so much information out there. My wife and I were actually just talking about this morning, that there is so many free resources out there. It's honestly really hard to fail in business right now. Not to say that every business professional or entrepreneur is going to succeed. It definitely takes a special person. It takes time, it takes energy, it takes effort, but it also takes the right investments to make those things happen. But what I can say is, one of the best things that someone can do is align yourself with someone who is at a place where you want to be. And what I mean by that is, look to people as inspirations, not competition. Look at someone within the space that you're in, the marketing genre that you're a part of, the business profession that you're a part of. Look at them. See what they're posting on social media. Get close to them. Attend a workshop of theirs. Find out, through whatever research you need to do. So say you're following someone that has multiple services and products that they offer. They have multiple reoccurring revenue sources. They're making, $50,000 to $60,000 a month reoccurring revenue. They're living a great life. They're only working 3 days a week, whatever the case may be. If that's what you want, align yourself with that person. Every step that Nancy and I have taken in our business journey has involved aligning ourselves with someone else that is a few steps ahead of us. Because why would I spend years and years and years and tons of money on things that are not aligned with where we want to be? I would rather invest in someone else's journey that's where I want to be, so I can learn exactly the steps that need to be taken to get there. And the image that I like to paint for people is a bridge. On one side of the bridge is where you are right now. Wherever you are in business, wherever you are revenue-wise, across that bridge is where that person is and where you want to be. And now you have to figure out, how can I lay down a path to bridge my side of the bridge to that person's side? And sometimes that's investing in their course or their program or their one-on-one coaching or a mastermind that they have. Those have been and continue to be some of the best investments that Nancy and I have ever made. Because when you align yourself with the right person, guess what? You're going to learn all the up-to-date things on the marketing world. You're going to learn all the updated ways of putting yourself out there the right way. You're going to learn all the updated and new ways of growing a business in today's market, because it is very competitive out there. Every minute there's a new entrepreneur being born and someone else launching something new. And what can you do to separate yourselves from the other people? What can you do to position yourself as the go-to person? And I'll go back to something that I said earlier in the conversation. Everything that we strive to do for ourselves and what we teach other people is things that someone can do to position themselves as a person of value. That is the end all be all.
That is very insightful. The first thing that I would want to, talk more about is when you mentioned about aligning yourself with someone and having that someone inspire you so that you can learn from that person and emulate that person eventually. Not treat that person as a competition, but really find ways to learn from him or her and also find ways to get close to that. So, in terms of reversing it on the other side, because you definitely have done it, I am sure that a lot of the viewers and listeners seeing this or hearing this today would be like, I want to be Scott. I would want to achieve certain portions of what he's already achieved, if not all. In terms of you mentoring, giving value, sharing your knowledge, what's your style like? Because I'm sure now it's all about you giving back or training and coaching and mentoring. What's your style like for those people who are, reaching out to you?
So I'm very direct. Obviously, you could probably tell by that. But I'm also very pragmatic in the way that I have a system and a process for everything. And I think this goes back to when I was a personal trainer, because when you're a personal trainer and nutritionist, and I also did competitive bodybuilding, you have to be structured. You have to have a routine. You have to have a system in place. I didn't just say, well, what do I feel like working out today? I had a structure of what muscle groups I was working on a particular day. When someone said, hey, Scott, I need a nutrition plan, I wouldn't just tell them what they needed to do. I would write up an entire plan for them and like, here's what you need to do on Monday for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Here's how much of these things you had to do. So that same process got reacclimated into my business coaching and consulting. So when we work with people, we have a system and a process. So when you have a structure of how you've done something, and that can be duplicated and then shared with someone else, that's when success can follow. So we learned from the mistakes that we made that it's not good to just throw spaghetti at the wall and just kind of figure things out as you go. We believe in, having project management tools where we have, our daily order of operations, our daily methods, right? Having the right CRM in place, things that really foundationally will help a business grow and scale. That's the whole thing. You want to see progress year in, year out. So when we're working with people, we first and foremost take that 10,000-foot view of what they have in place, what they don't have in place, and what they need to have in place. So we're suggestive coaches and consultants in the sense that we never tell people, oh, you should do this. We ask questions. What is it that you're looking to achieve? How much money do you want to make? What do you want your business to look like? When we get those answers, now we can direct them down the path that they need to go down.
Love that. Like the structure and the systems that will eventually lead to success is a great takeaway. On the other side of things as well, now that you've given those suggestions, those recommendations to your clients, how do you then measure your own success when you are coaching someone or coaching a certain company or being a mentor?
Well, I think the way that success is measured from our standpoint is are we giving people the necessary things and setting them up for success? So are we doing our part as their coaches to make sure that they're getting all the necessary things to get to where they want to be? Now, here's where an important thing comes into play. When you're a coach and you're working with a client or a student or whatever, there has to be a middle ground of collaboration. You can give that client all of your knowledge, all of your tools, and your resources. But the second part of that is that there has to be accountability. Because if that person is not going to apply what you've taught them, they can't succeed. So the success is two parts. One part, making sure that we have the right person in front of us and knowing that we can serve them the right way. But the second part of that success is making sure the person that's in front of you is 100% committed. If you're not 100%, if you're 99%, you're not committed. You have to be committed to what you want to achieve.
That is great. It's like, it's really a good measure of success, if in my view, because it's basically, meshing in collaboration and commitment, but also at the same time, you have the tangible tools, structure, system, know-how. I think it's a perfect way to make things work hand in hand. The other thing that kind of interested me with what you've mentioned is you are very much focused and you know exactly who you will be helping and what your scope would be. You're not over promising. You're not saying that, okay, you want to set up a business, I'll be there to help you, because you very much know what your swim lane is and what you're good at and what you can share, which to me is great because it allows you to show your transparency. That to me is a great sign of having great values that are non-negotiable. So delving into that, what are your non-negotiable values that you uphold every single day?
Well, I would say there's a lot of values, but I would say we seek to align ourselves with people that are open, that are coachable, self-responsible, meaning they take responsibility for what they do or don't do, people that are genuine, people that are kind, authentic, and again, going back to something that I stated earlier, value added. I always tell people that the people that you attract are typically a mirror of yourself. So you want to attract people that are just like you. And I can confidently say the people that are in all of our programs are mirrors of ourselves, just a few steps behind. They are good-hearted people. They are value-added people. They are kind. They are caring. They are loving. They are authentic. They are genuine. They're coachable. And that's who we are.
It's great. It's like you're building that community of people who has that, power and commitment to continuously learn and develop that great sense of confidence that they can empower amongst themselves and actually use. That's beautiful. But for those people, Scott, because a lot of my listeners and viewers are those who are just starting their careers,
Yeah.
those who are probably 21, 22, still figuring stuff in their lives, not knowing exactly what to do or navigate this, crazy journey where we are right now. So if you're about to talk to them or talk to your 21-year-old self, knowing what you know now, what message or piece of advice or suggestions would you impart to them?
Well, if I was talking to my 21-year-old self, or anyone that's of that age right now, I would say there's always a better way. You only know what you know. And going back to something that I said earlier, find someone that you look up to. Find someone that's living the way that you want to live or doing what you want to be doing, and get close to them, whether it's just following them on social media, being a part of some of the workshops that they have. But I would say more importantly, think about where you want to be 5 years from now. And I never did any vision casting. So Nancy and I continue to, we have happening boards. We don't have vision boards. We have a happening board that we create every year. So what we want to happen this year, whatever our financial goal is, how we're going to achieve it, our personal goals, our relationship goals, whether that's to have a date night a week and whatever it is. But I would say for that 21-year-old, really think about and envision what you want your life to look like 5 years from now. Where do you want to be living? How much money do you want to be earning? How do you want to be earning it, right? How many hours a day do you want to work? How many days a week do you want to work? So start with the end in mind. And that's why this is important, because if you can envision where you want to be 5 years from now, from where you are right now you just have to fill the gaps in between. And you have to think about, okay, if that's where I want to be 5 years from now, and here's where I am right now, I need to build a success path. I need to figure out what are the things that I need to have in place that I don't have in place now that is going to allow me to get there. So it's not shortening that success curve, but if I would have did that at an earlier age, if I really vision casted a little bit sooner, could I have accomplished things quicker? Maybe, maybe not. But for that person that's listening to that right now, that's just starting out, Don't just focus on where you are right now. Focus on where you want to be 3 to 5 years from now, and have that as your North Star. Have that as your compass. And as long as you look at that North Star every single day and you take those small actions in order to get there, you may be there in 3 years. You may be there in 5 years. You may be there in only 2 years, because when you take action, you get results.
That's very meaningful and powerful, Scott. Thanks for sharing that. So, I have my last question, and it goes back to the first question. You've shared your meaningful life story. Now, my last question to you is, what does a meaningful life mean to you today?
So for me, that means knowing that every day that I wake up, I am doing my best to live my best life, but to also show other people how to live their best life. Um, life is short. I think nowadays we're hearing more and more young people passing away. A good friend of mine at 43 years old had a heart attack. He's okay. He had a couple stents put in, but it just goes to show you that you don't know when we will expire. And that part of living a meaningful life is squeezing as much juice as you can out of each and every day, spending your time the way that you want to spend it, with who you want to spend it with, and how you want to spend it, and blazing a trail for other people. I interviewed a friend of mine a few years ago. His name is Cody Schuin. He's a Canadian author. He wrote a wonderful book called Your Everyday Legacy. And he worked in a funeral home for nearly 20 years. So he was surrounded by death all the time. And one of the big things that he comes back to with the experience that he had working there is you don't have to wait till you're gone for your legacy to be felt. Leave it while you're still living. And I think that's the big thing. You can look at the likes of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr., all these people that blaze trails, and we celebrate them and we still think about them as they're still here, and they've been gone for years and years and years. But we're still here right now. Your legacy could be left right now. So think about that, how you're impacting people each and every day, not just from a business perspective, from a life perspective. Think about, your partner, your spouse, your significant other, your kids, your nieces, your nephews. All those people are being impacted in a positive way by the way that you're choosing to live your life. That is living a meaningful life.
That's just amazing, Scott. That's beautiful. And I think those people who have heard it would have a lot of great takeaways, understanding that, the power of meaning, the power of impact, the power of success coming from an experienced person definitely help a lot. I really enjoy this conversation, and I'm sure that all our listeners did as well. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you and to give you the floor so that you can invite others to your business, where they can follow you, where they can learn from you.
Well, thank you, Joe. Obviously, the easiest place is LinkedIn. That's where I spend a good deal of my time. So you could just search Scott Aaron. I'll pop up on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You can go to my personal website, which is scottaaron.net. If you want to learn more about how I help people with LinkedIn. If you want to learn about how my wife and I help people grow and scale their business, you can go to the Time to Grow. That is our company website that my wife and I run together, and would love to connect with you.
And with that, thank you so much for listening and being part of this conversation. And thank you so much again, Scott. Till next
Thank you,
time.
Joe. Appreciate you.